Okay, so it's been a long time since I've done a guide for Fight Night Champion, so I thought it was about time I updated my advice in relation to spamming. I've learnt a lot since I made the last guides a couple of years ago. This is all freestyle, so please bear with me. It might not be pretty, but I'm just going to try and pass as much knowledge on to you as I can in the fight against spamming on this game, which, in my opinion, has ruined the game and is the main result for the major exodus of normal players. So we'll get straight into it. This guy, he's called Gonzo. He's one of your stereotypical chicken wing spammers. It's a very, very hard strategy to beat, very hard to avoid being hit, and it's very frustrating to play against. So notice here, I'm trying to find range. Even though chicken wingers fight the same, each one is quite unique in the frequency of the punches thrown and the angles they throw them at and the range, depending on the reach and stuff like that. A lot of the time, the key to beating people is working out the range, working out the block, the weaknesses to the blocks, and which punches are more effective at breaking through certain blocks and certain builds. Each build I've found creates a different set of challenges. So, for example, the cross block is quite resistant to jabs and straights, but it's quite vulnerable to uppercuts. If you hit the body first, then the head becomes more vulnerable with the cross block because of the way the block's set up. I don't know why, but it's just the game mechanics. Most chicken wing spammers will use the cross block, probably because it gives the most defense from fellow spammers who they spend most of the time fighting against, I would imagine, because let's be honest, 90% of the players on this game at least are spammers now to some degree, and the chicken wingers make up the worst ones. So with this guy, he's throwing the same punch over and over again, mixing some other bits in, and he's backing off. So you get the chicken wing, and the backing off is probably the worst combo you can face, because the farming points, if they think they've done enough damage to win the round, they will just stop throwing and run all match and sort of take pot shots at you, countering you. So the way I deal with it is I've made a build that's quite powerful, but is also quite good with stamina if managed effectively. The aim is to drain their stamina whilst trying to win the rounds at the same time. It's not always possible to win the early rounds, but a lot of the time I will aim to smash the body in the early rounds, concede the points, and then ramp the pressure up and try and knock them down late game. In this particular fight, I do get quite lucky with a couple of knockdowns, and that sort of wins me the fight in the end, although it's still pretty close. And I've heard on the grapevine this guy is very frustrated that he lost, so that's always good to hear. What else? So you can see he's throwing these chicken wings here, and they do break through your block most of the time. The only way I've found to get around it is timing and head movement. It's still no guarantee that it's going to miss, but it makes it a lot more dangerous and tricky for them. You can also disrupt them with a mixture of pushing and sort of playing them at the wrong game a bit. But unless you're really adept in chicken winging and push straighting, it's quite dangerous to actually do it against them, bearing in mind that they're used to that. So you'll commonly find that if you try and do a push straight on them, they will side strafe and do an uppercut, which can be quite devastating. The best one for me is, especially with the cross block chicken winger, is to attack with a series of uppercuts to the body and the head. These are the punches that are most likely to break through, and they're also the punches that will do most damage to stamina, I've found from experience. The body uppercuts are particularly effective in stamina drain, and as the fight goes on, they become more and more painful for them to absorb. Because most of the pro chicken wing spammers use cross block, that's the block that I'm going to focus on. With the other blocks I'll just touch on, but for textbook, straights are quite effective at breaking through textbook, and hooks as well if you hit the body first. Philly shell is especially vulnerable to straight punches, as long as you pick the right side, depending on their stance. Or if they're conventional, then the right straight will be more effective. If they're southpaw, then you could switch to a left straight, and that would break through the guard a lot of the time. The Philly shell is also very vulnerable to chicken wing, like ridiculously vulnerable. Cross block is probably the most effective one at blocking chicken wing, but I just hate it. It really does represent the cancer that is spamming on this game. This cross block, maximum height, maximum reach. I just don't want anything to do with it. If you can train yourself to chicken wing, it's a way of countering them. But to be honest, I think it just turns into a chicken wing fight. It's just awful. I don't enjoy it. Even when I win using chicken wings, it really does leave a bad taste in my mouth. You feel dirty. Unfortunately though, with players like this at this level, there's always going to be an element of spamming for me. You can see how frustrated I was here because I've 3 times replayed them. I don't do that very often. But for me, these players really are the worst of the worst, and they tend to bully newer players or players who are just not used to dealing with this kind of fighting. So it's always satisfying just to sort of avenge all those players who have left the game or rage quit or broken something as a result of losing to people like this. What else then? It's probably worth talking about builds and punch sets. For me, I think it's important to have the heaviest fighter you can, although you've got to balance that against stamina. Now you see a lot of these spammers who have thick or sort of flabby builds on the fighters, and that gives them a power edge, but there's definitely a stamina penalty for that, and you can use that against them. This guy, I believe, is using the same build as me, which is muscular athletic, which gives them more stamina, but because of the way he's playing, it's the only weakness to chicken winging is it leaves you especially vulnerable to stamina drain. Power punches cost more stamina over time, and if you get hit while throwing them, then there's definitely a price to pay in relation to that with stamina. So for me, I think inside fighter, bear in mind that I've not tried all of the fighter types. I've tried brawler, I think I've tried counter puncher and boxer puncher. Certainly from those, inside fighter is far superior in absorbing damage and giving damage and just general toughness. I can't really speak for the other ones like unconventional and stuff like that. So a lot of the time it's just a case of trial and error and experimenting to find what suits you. The problem with this game, and the problem with doing guides about this game, with a head-to-head sports game like this, the only way you're going to get better is dedicating enough time to learn by your mistakes, which unfortunately involves losing, and losing a lot. In the early days, I lost just as much as everyone else, although I did maybe have a bit more of an edge because I played previous Fight Night games, but my win ratio was probably 1-1. So for every win I had, I was losing 1, and that remained for quite some time. So like anything, if you don't give up and you keep persevering, you keep trying, eventually you start to improve your reaction times on the game and improve. You learn the movements of people's builds, their punches. So I'd say after the amount of time that I've been playing for, most of it becomes second nature. I don't really have to think about what buttons I'm pressing on the controller, I just do it. A lot of it's autopilot. So that allows you to think about other things. For example, the person you're fighting, what build have they got? What style have they got? What punches do they throw? And once you can start concentrating on stuff like that, you can start testing and seeing what works. And to be honest, I sort of have a sort of mental library of people that I've fought And whether I'm on the spectrum or something, I don't know, but I seem to remember a lot of statistics and stuff about people. So if I fought someone before and they're like a notable spammer, then I'll sort of have a rough idea of how they fight and what they're vulnerable to. So you've got to use that to your advantage, and the problem is building up that sort of knowledge takes time, and there's no two ways about it. I must have put around 10,000 hours into this game, I would say, over the years. It's a long, long time. Now, I do know people or I know of people who become, I don't know if you can call it good, in a much shorter space of time, but that is people who fight like this. They chicken wing, they spam. They get trained by people like Wavy Gio, who is one of the most successful spammers on the game. He's got a little army of people now that he's trained to fight like him, like AE5000 and people like that. I don't know about mods. I suspect Wavy Gio is modded, to be honest. I think his block, his power, his stamina just seem crazy. But the problem is on this game, there's no way of proving that, so it's almost pointless talking about it. All I'll say is that they've mastered the abuse of the mechanics on this game and seem determined to ruin it for everyone who wants to play the game properly, and they've been successful. You know, this game's been going a long time. When it first started, spamming wasn't too bad. Most people played relatively normally. But like anything, things evolve over time, and now you've just got hordes of people who fight like this. You've got gyms dedicated to spamming. You've got quite a lot of toxic people who fight like that, who, because they've learned how to abuse the mechanics and because they win people most of the time, they think there's some sort of god on the game. And I think most normal people just can't be arsed of it, and I don't blame them. They get to a point where you just think, what am I playing this for? And I sort of understand that, and I've had that battle myself numerous times. There's been a few times where I've come away from the game for months and just thought I might not go back to it, but something always brings me back. I don't know what it is, but there's just something very satisfying about particularly beating players like this with a standard Xbox controller. Being an older person, I'm in my 30s, you know, so I haven't got probably the reactions of a teenager who's grown up on technology. It can be done, but it takes dedication, a lot of stress, a lot of frustration. It doesn't do your blood pressure any good, I'll be honest. But like anything, the stress can be managed. You can focus on staying calmer, and that's also now I mention it, it's a very critical part of the game, is staying calm under pressure. Staying calm when you're fighting people like this. Because if you panic or you get angry, you're probably going to lose, because you'll do things you won't normally do. You'll be reckless, you get frustrated. Because you're frustrated, you'll throw more power shots, and then you'll drain your own stamina, end up with a stamina advantage, and then they'll just dismantle you. So staying calm, taking a systematic approach, like what I'm doing now. You know, that's the thing with pushing as well. I forgot to mention, if you push and then deliver a power straight shot to the body, it's very hard for them to avoid. Headshots, different story, but body shots pushing and body shots to players like this can be quite devastating. And you can see that as the fight's wearing on now. I do believe I had the stamina advantage, and it makes a big difference. The problem with this guy is his reach and his efficiency with throwing the chicken wing. And it does end up being a close result despite 2 knockdowns. If it wasn't for those 2 knockdowns, I probably would have lost this. So I know that this guide is sort of a bit disjointed. Like I say, it's totally freestyle. But I've not done like a guide for a long time, and I just wanted to sort of update the community and give what information I can, because I know there's still quite a lot of people who watch Fight Night. It's the only boxing game really that's popular. I do think Undisputed from what I've seen, just doesn't look like it's going to be as good. Despite being, a 13-year-old game now, it still looks good, it still plays good. The mechanics are good, despite the abuse. It's the counter punching, the combos you can throw, the knockdowns. I think that's what's so addictive about it. It's just a shame that it's ruined by this, arcade style fighting. They call it meta, don't they? The meta. Basically what people can cheese to win the most. Which I think, unfortunately, is just hand in hand with how society has gone, and that's sort of human nature, the urge to win by any means, and if that means cheating, then people will cheat. Anyway, enough about ranting. Back to the guide. So you'll see, from watching this, uppercuts break through the cross block more often than not if timed correctly. Timing is also a big factor, which only comes with experience and just practicing playing the game. Side strafing chicken wings is also an effective method of countering and can leave them quite vulnerable. But you just got to be careful, because if they're proficient, they can actually trip you up with that and end up hitting you as you're strafing, so the timing has to be bob on. What else? If they push straight in you, then I find that a jab to the head and then body shot after tends to work more often than not. Or if you can manage some head movement, then you can line yourself up for a good counter punch. With chicken wingers, unfortunately, I think a lot of the time it's just safer to go to the body because of the nature of the punch they're throwing. They are using head movement every time they throw, so you're likely to miss with a headshot when they're in that animation. You've got to wait until after they've thrown the punch, pretty much. Or wait till you're on the attack before they've thrown it. So, what else is there to say? Just trying to think. I can't really think of much, to be honest. I think I've said most of it. The right uppercut, left hook combination you saw me throw just then can be quite effective with the cross block. For some reason, if you hit the body first, the animation goes down to deal with the body punch and leaves the head vulnerable momentarily. But again, with the chicken wing, you've got to be careful with any shot to the head, which is why the safest way to do it is to just systematically attack the body and just apply pressure, constant pressure. And pressure is an art form that has to be practiced. It's dangerous as well because you're walking them down and you're sort of, in a way, playing into the game plan. Try and stay as close as you can to them. That's another key element. If you get too far away, I've found that the chicken wing that's when it's at its most dangerous. If it's close range, even if they connect, it's not as powerful, especially if they've got a long reach, so you can sort of absorb more shots. But if you give them the distance to get full extension, then you really are in a sticky wicket and you're probably going to get caught badly. So close them down, apply pressure, side strafe like that, like I just did then, and uppercut if you can to the head or the body, whatever you feel like is most achievable. Just keep applying pressure and aim to drain them of stamina and go for the knockdowns. Another thing that's just popped into my head, you see with the cross block, it happened a few seconds ago, it's just triggered the memory. Sometimes the block will open, you'll see like the arms widen out vertically for some reason, so that it creates a bit of a gap. And like now it's fully closed, but you'll see it'll happen in a minute probably, where it opens up. When that happens, that's an opportunity to get a straight shot through that guard. It's your best shot you've got against the cross block, and they're actually quite vulnerable when you see that difference in the animation of the block. I don't know what triggers it, whether it's when they throw to the body and it doesn't quite go up how it normally does, but I've noticed that happens on pretty much everyone who uses cross block. That animation will pop up at opportune moments. It's a case of capitalising on those opportunities. If you manage to drain enough stamina off them, and they've got less power, then your damage is going to increase, and you'll hopefully start winning the rounds based on damage. The rounds are scored primarily on damage, I believe. Accuracy is a big factor as well. But if you're dealing more damage, then you're more likely to win the round. And the way to maximise your damage is to maintain your stamina whilst draining theirs. You get the stamina advantage, then you're landing more damage with each punch. And I believe that is the key to winning a lot of these fights. And that's where I've had the most success, particularly in the last 2 years. I feel like I've had a bit of a breakthrough with that in particular, with finding an ideal build that capitalises on power whilst preserving stamina. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all. You'll see he gets more desperate now and he's starting to push straight and stuff, leaving himself vulnerable. I was actually expecting to get another knockdown here, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. How close I was to getting one, I'm not sure, but I suspect pretty close. When they're on the attack, that's when you really can punish them with uppercuts and stuff, because that's when they're most vulnerable. They don't want to be on the attack, and if they're on the attack like this, it means that they're probably panicking, because they know they're down on points, and they know that the only way they're going to win now is by getting a last minute knockdown or knockout. That is pretty much it, guys. I'm sorry it's been a bit rambly. I've gone off at tangents and stuff. I hope it still proves useful. Do let me know in the comments if you've got any other questions that I've missed. I will address them as best I can. For people who are still playing this game, who don't spam, and are trying to sim fight, all the best to you. You have my respect and my sympathy for having to deal with this on a daily basis. Have fun, and thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel.
This is where you hope that the criterion for scoring a fight is understood by the judges, because if there's any gray area, you're going to be all over the place in this one. Very hard to pick a winner.